Hello everybody. My name is Smit Shah. I am a Western classical pianist from Mumbai. Um, I have experience in this field of 10 plus years now, and I've been teaching students for a little over 2 years. And having students for online and private classes, close to 9 to 10 students, is has been a very good experience for me so far. And yeah, as far as my degrees are concerned, I have cleared the Associate of Trinity College from London, along with their 8 piano grades with merit and distinction, respectively. Being an active concert performer in India as well as internationally, I've also participated in several master classes and competitions. So, without any further ado, let's delve right into the topic for today, which is Introduction to Scales. So, I want all of you to take a very close look at this painting. I'm very sure that all of you relate to this because all of us have painted this kind of picture at some point in life, especially during childhood. It's this, the cliched scenery. But now I just want you to think what would happen if I would have painted this scenery with colors which were not previously imagined before. So we have this artist's palette on the left of that painting. What if I used a green color to paint the river water and maybe something like a purple color to paint the bushes and the grass that's lying on the ground? I'm sure you all agree that it would just look very absurd. So the same thing applies to music and yeah, basically piano in general. So just to demonstrate this fact, let me play something to you and just think for yourself if this sounds like a familiar tune. All right. Now, I would actually be surprised if any one of you came with an answer because such music does not exist. All right, so this is something that I just made up, and it was not just done to for a joke or a gag, but it was actually done for a very important thing. So why does this music sound kind of familiar, but it actually doesn't really exist? It's because I just tweaked a few notes, and by few notes I meant that I tweaked some notes which actually define the kind of music that it was. So this is basically what scales have. This is basically why scales are very important in music. So first of all, you can see the first point in this slide. They are building blocks of music, and they are a collection of notes which set a framework. So any song, any piece that you hear in life is basically composed within this framework. So it is, in other words, composed within a scale, right? So if I kind of speak the scale, so basically if I pick the framework, it completely changes the piece's meaning. So now let me play the original piece, what it actually was supposed to sound in the original scale, all right? And boom, now you all of a sudden realize what this music is. I'm sure you all of you have heard that. It's Faded by Alan Walker. So what I did in the beginning was just tweak a few notes. For example, there was this F. It's fine, you don't need to see, but there was basically this black note which was not supposed to be played, but I still played it and it made it sound happier. So just by changing one note, okay, I'm just changing one note, and now I'm changing as in back to the original one just by changing one note. Okay, this I promise you, I'm not changing anything else. So previously it was this, and now it is. There's just one note that I changed, and it completely, um, uh, transformed the meaning of the music. So this is what basically scales do. They actually set a framework for any piece, and music has always been, and it is always going to be composed within this boundary. Otherwise, if there is no boundary, it just basically gets converted into a total chaos and all of that. So Yeah, so basically, what is a scale? All right. So a scale is usually a set of 7 notes which are ordered in increasing pitch. So with the piano, it's very easy to really identify a scale because if I play something from left to right, I'm basically playing a scale. For example, if I'm playing that, I'm basically playing a scale. So now we all know what sa re ga ma pa da ni sa is. That basically is a scale. Or for us English speaking individuals, we all also might know what do re mi fa sol la ti do is. That's also a scale. So I'm just going to sing sa re ga ma pa da ni sa or do re mi fa sol la ti do. And you might notice that the first and the last syllables for both the notes, as in both the scales, are the same. I'm starting with sa and sa, or do and do in case of English. So sa re ga ma pa da ni sa, or do re mi fa sol la ti do. Or if we actually look at the names, note names, C D E F G A B C. So it's basically says that we have to have the last and the first notes as the same syllable. So that's again just theory, which is not really relevant to our discussion, but it is still important. So I still discussed it. So here is an example of the major scale. So the one that I just played was the C major scale. It is one of the most commonly used scales, and it has a very bright and happy characteristic sound in keeping with uh, the mood and the uh, lively atmosphere of tonight's discussion. So, anyways, so the C major, or you could have actually noticed that if I call the scale C major, it basically means that it starts from C. So, if there is a certain note like F major, it has to start from F. So, I hope that you know all the note names. That's a kind of prerequisite that I've taken for this particular presentation. So, if we have a scale that starts from G, we're going to call it a G major scale. All right. So yes, so we already know that it has 7 notes: C, D, E, F, G, A, B. So that's 7 notes, and the last note is the same as the first. So the 8th note is the same. And this is actually very commonly used musical scale in all the kinds of music that we hear today. With the thing which I'm just going to demonstrate to you. So in Western classical music, the music that I actually learned, it's the Prelude in C major by Bach, and I promised you that all of those pieces I'm just going to play are in the same scale. They are in the same C major scale. And a very good way of verifying if I'm playing it everything in the C major scale is that you have to notice if I'm playing any black notes. Because if I am, it means that it's not in the C major scale. Because the main identity of the C major scale in particular is that it only has white notes. So if I play, there is no black note at all. So let's see if all those pieces, Prelude in C major, the Titanic theme for West Temple music, and Kal Ho Na Ho and Pehla Nasha have anything from the black notes. If they do, it means that I'm actually playing in some other scale, which I probably am not. So let's see. And now moving on to the Titanic theme. Now moving to the next song, which is Kal Ho Na Ho. Let's see if this is also from the C major scale. You know the rest. And Pehla Nasha again. Alright. So that just basically demonstrates that all of these songs were composed within the framework of the C major scale, right? The major scale, of course, because there was no black note, and also the C major scale. So, alright, so now moving on to the next slide. So this is actually the most fun part, because it actually, for me, I've always been very passionate about mathematics, and this concept basically links music to mathematics. So there is a particular formula through which you can construct a major scale from any note. So I just showed you the C major scale, but you can basically build a major scale from any note using this formula. So let me show you this. So this is the C major scale. Now if I choose some other note, C sharp. How about building a note from that, scale from that? That's the C sharp major scale. This is the D major scale. This is the E major scale. So we're just going to see how to actually build a major scale from any note. So if I give you a certain note, the F sharp major, for example, how would you be able to build a scale from that note? All right, so the formula for that is, as you can see on the screen, it's quite weird looking. It's TWWH, WWWH. So T is, it stands for tonic. So tonic is basically the your home base, or the note that you're basing your scale on. So for example, in the C major scale, your tonic would be C. In your F major scale, your tonic would be the F, right? And yeah, so let's see what W stands for. So it basically stands for skipping a whole step to the right. So as you can see on the screen right now, if I skip a whole step to the right from C, I'm basically skipping the black note, because I'm just skipping the next note and then moving on to the next one. That's basically self-explanatory. And if I say something like H, it means that I have to skip a half step to the right. So for example, from E, a half step would be the F. So we are only moving on to the right notes, and it depends upon how many steps we are skipping. So it's either W, which is a whole step to the right, or H, which is a half step to the right. So let's again confirm if the formula holds true for the C major. So as you know, that the C major is something that starts on C, and we already know that it's always going to be the white note. So let's verify if this formula holds true for the C major scale, right? So our tonic is going to be the C, of course. After that, we have in the formula W written. So that means we have to skip a whole step to the right, which means we are going to move to the D. We are going to skip that black note. So that's good. It just holds that, shows that the formula holds true. So skipping that whole step, we have the D. Skipping a whole step again, based on the formula, we have E. And now we have a half step, right? So you can see the half step from E to the next note is F. So that again holds true. After that, we have a whole step. So again, F to that black note, which we're going to skip, G. Again, a whole step, so A. Again, a whole step, so B. And finally, the half step, which brings us to C. And our scale is complete. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. All right. So now let's see if this formula holds true for some other major scale. As I promised you, this formula is actually applicable to any key on the piano. This piano has 88 keys, and it's applicable to all the 88 keys. How fascinating is that? I mean, just the fact that you can basically link music to mathematics is already very fascinating. So let's see if the formula holds true for the G major. So as you can see from the yellow dots that I've just put there to mark the notes, you can see that there is one black note, the F hashtag sign, which is actually called a sharp in music. We only have that one black note. Apart from that, all of those notes are white notes. So I'm just going to play the G major scale. This is how it sounds. It's exactly like how it is written. So I'm just playing those notes. So G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. So that was our black note. And G. So again. Right. So that's our G major scale. And let's see if the formula holds true. So again, because it is the G major, our tonic is going to be G. No surprises there. The next step is the whole, which is one step ahead. So we're going to skip that black note. Then we again have a whole, so that brings us to B. C, which is due to the half step in the fourth column that you can see in the screen. After that, we have our whole step, which brings us to D. We have a whole step again, which brings us to E. And now a whole step, which brings us to the F sharp. So that's very important. So it just demonstrates that the formula holds true for G major as well. And now the half step, which brings us back to the tonic, as in the note that we started with. So we have our G major scale. So that's our black note, and then back to the G. So how about the next scale? Again, so now this is the D major scale. Again, big surprise, the tonic is going to be D. So let's see if this note actually holds true. So now I'm actually going to play it later, and we're just going to see the formula first. So D is the tonic. The next note is E. The next note is F sharp because we are going to the whole, right? After that, we have half. So that's G. Whole, that's A. Whole again, that's B. Whole again, which brings us to C sharp, which is again an important part because that's a black note. And half finally, which brings us to the B, right? By the way, that C sharp and F sharp, like I said, it's basically that hashtag sign that you can see on the right. Right, so it's very difficult to say hashtags because we already have so many black notes, so it's better to call it sharp. That's already a shorter word, right? Yeah, so let's see if this formula holds true. So basically, I'm going to play those two black notes, this F hashtag and C hashtag. So let's see if this formula holds true. F sharp, G, A, B, and now the black note, C sharp, B. Alright, in fact, I would encourage all of you who has access to an instrument to actually try these scales out for yourself, because I mean, trying this stuff actually helps a lot rather than me just demonstrating the stuff. Because music is something that you can only learn when you actually practice and not just listen and all of that, right? All right, so that I think that brings us to the end of that theory session. So now let's actually come to the musical skills learned, right? Because again, in any field of education, it is very important to ensure that what you're learning is something that you're going to apply in the future, right? So what are the musical skills learned by actually learning scales? Because it all kind of seems like such a very monotonous activity. I mean, you're not making any music, you're just playing notes in a certain set of order. So yeah, so that just brings us to the musical skills learned. The first one is, like you can see in the screen, it's improved note reading and memorization. So some of you actually know how to read music, and that's a really good thing. You should actually, I would encourage you to keep on doing that. So basically, when you're reading music, you come across these funny looking things, these black notes with a kind of stem which is sticking out. So that basically signifies the notes. And just to clear out the basics, the higher the black note is, as in the black dot is, the higher the note that I'm going to play. So for example, this starts in the first black dot that you can see here, the place where my cursor is moving is the D. So that's the highest. And now if you can see the black dots after that, they are actually arranged in a linear fashion. So they're going uniformly upwards, right? So that just shows that it's going uniformly upwards in the screen. But what does that show in the on the piano? Right? So you can already identify that as a scale because, right? So that's your G major scale. So you could see how, anyways, while playing a scale, we always play successive notes. We don't really skip many notes, even though we do skip a black note a few times, but not more than that, definitely. I mean, that's the maximum that we would actually leave, right? So if the black dots actually show something that's moving uniformly upwards, as in a linear fashion, it would basically mean that I'm actually playing a scale. And even in the next part, the part that I've circled, again, there are notes which are moving linearly upwards. It again shows that I'm going to play a scale. Again, starting from a different note because these are a bit higher. Right? So just identifying these scaling passages helps you improve your reading ability a lot. Because otherwise what you would end up doing is that there are some people who actually encourage this kind of education, but it's not really efficient, because what they would do is they would ask people, as in their students, to basically read each and every note, but it's not really necessary. I mean, if I had just access to one of these notes, and I knew that the other notes are just going to follow in a similar pattern of notes rising upwards, I wouldn't have I wouldn't have needed to decode those notes, because I just know the first note, and I know that there's a scaling passage afterwards of three notes which are basically following that progression of notes moving upwards. I wouldn't have required to read the other notes. So for example, playing this one. So that's just the first four bars, as in the first four sections of that music. So you could, I hope you could identify the scaling passage. That's the first scaling passage. That's the second scaling passage. Right. So that's the first musical skill learned. And this is actually for pretty advanced pianists who actually know how to read music. But yes, so you can see how scales would actually benefit them as well. And now moving on to the next slide. Yes. So the next again is something called transposition. So what does that mean? So as a pianist and as musicians, we have to collaborate with a lot of other musicians on a daily basis. And this is just an example. If a singer is supposed to sing a particular song and he finds it very difficult to stretch his voice to that high level, you kind of have to transpose that music so that he can actually sing it. So for example, if I'm playing music like Country Roads, so now you can see that I'm already stretching a lot to actually sing those notes. It's too high for me. Country roads. I can't even sing that. You can see it. Now, if I'm the singer, I would basically just ask the pianist to come on, please tone it down a little, and just play it in a lower scale so that I'm actually able to sing. So now let me transpose the whole thing to a lower scale. So basically, what I'm doing is that although I'm changing the notes, my scale characteristic still remains the same, because this is again in a major scale. It's just that I'm moving from a C major scale to a G major scale. And I mean, I would have been terrified to actually play something on a different scale if I had not known what the basics of music are. And if I had not known these what scale relationships are, it would have been very difficult for me to get adjusted to the next key. But yeah, so basically, if I actually was playing on a C and I had to transpose to a G immediately, I can already see that, okay, this is my scale. So I just have to shift those notes to this one instead of working out on every note and trying to transpose it. I'm basically transposing the entire scale. So so basically from C major, I shifted to D major. So from here, I move to here. So that's basically what transposition is. So it's a very useful thing, especially when you actually have to perform a lot with other musicians. So the next musical skill that you can learn with scales is something that's called playing by ear. So let's say you've just come across a piece that you've never heard before in your life, and you're just asked to play it just like that. So that if you're able to do that, you're not superhuman. You just have very good ears. You have very good oral skills, and that actually cannot come without your knowledge in scales. So for example, I wish I could have demonstrated that to you, but since this is not happening live, basically if I've heard a song and what happens is that I'm already practicing it in my head because I know what the piano looks like, and I'm basically practicing the scale of that music, and I'm also practicing the note relationships all in my head without even actually touching the piano. And when I come to the piano, boom, the song just comes out of nowhere. So that's something that's called playing by ear, and it's a very fascinating and impressive activity for non-musicians, especially to show. So yeah, so that's something that you can really excel at. And the final thing is something that's called improvisation. So with improvisation, let's say I'm playing. All right, so let me just move on to the Bollywood song. I'm sure you've all heard this. So that's Om Shanti Om, right? The main theme of that. But it sounds too plain, doesn't it? I mean, I could actually make it a little bit richer so that it sounds like there's some actual music going on rather than just those plain successive notes, because that's frankly very boring. So if I have a good knowledge of scales, again, I know that this piece is composed in A minor, which means that there's only going to be white notes, no black notes at all. So I already know that the improvisation I'm going to do is all in this area, because if I do it in this area, it's going to sound bad and wrong. So I'm just going to move my left hand according to that, ensuring that my hand never touches the black keys. So that's it for today's session. I hope you had some valuable insights, and I wish you very well, as in good luck for your practice sessions. So that is it for today's session on scales. If you have any queries or any doubts, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me through UrbanPro. Yes, so I hope, look forward to having more of these amazing sessions. So till then, stay safe and stay healthy. Goodbye.